Okay, well, I want to take a moment and welcome you to the White Library Wednesday Workshop Series, and this is our second workshop here on September 21st, and we are going to be talking about the literature review tonight. My name is Terry Summey. I am one of the librarians here at Emporia State University, and I'm just going to present some information that I've learned about the literature review. A lot of what I'm presenting is from a resource called the Literature Review Six Steps to Success. But there's also some other resources that I've used in putting this together. So let's go ahead and get started. So starting off, what is a literature review? Mackey and McAvoy say that a literature review is a written argument that promotes a thesis position by building a case from credible evidence based on previous research. So what you do in the literature review is that you are taking the literature that you find, going through and trying to do an overview of a topic, and then synthesizing and evaluating that literature. So you're not just going through and summarizing the literature, but you're pulling it all together in a cohesive story, and you're providing some critique to it. So you're going through, looking at it, seeing what's out there. This is not new research. You're not creating your own research at this point with a literature review. What you are doing is going out and discovering what research has already been done. So you're finding previous research. Now, that doesn't mean that it might not be part of a research project where you will be developing your own research. But to begin with, this is not, you're not creating new research for a literature review. It helps you to better understand your topic and gain and know more about your topic, especially in the earlier stages. What you are doing is looking for literature that will help you know about your topic and be able to be an expert on what's been out there or in your area of research. However, one of the things that I've been told, and I would like to recommend to others, is that when we're doing research for a lot of these projects, whether it is for a thesis or a dissertation, or even if it's just for a classroom paper or a course assignment, we are not trying to save the world. This is not the last research that we're going to be doing. And so really the important thing is, how do you narrow this down so that you're not biting off too much, so that you're keeping it simple, and you're I guess at this point less is more. Being able to focus down and being very narrow in scope in what you're trying to do. Thing that is important, and one of the things I've got is, I said, may need to be subdivided into components. So when you're doing research, especially if you're writing a thesis or a dissertation, you may be looking at a topic that really hasn't been studied in the way that you're looking at it before. So you may not find the exact article that you're looking for on your exact topic because it may not exist. And so in doing that, you may need to subdivide your topic and look for different parts of that topic instead of looking for the topic as a whole. One of the things that you can do then with a literature review, by looking at all the literature on a subject, is to then look out there and identify where those gaps occur. Where is there research that has not been done? Where are you struggling finding research? And those might help you identify, especially if you're starting with a broad subject and you're not sure what you want to do research on, or you're not sure about your focused topic. Looking to see where those areas are that haven't had research done on them is a really good way to identify a topic that's unique. So where are those further areas of research or those gaps? And sometimes those are identified by authors of studies. So when you look at a particular study, you may find in that study that there is, at the end of that, there's usually more research could be done in this, or further research could be done. There's usually suggestions for more research. That's another way to identify topics that you might want to do. Something else is to be able to discover controversies. Later I'll talk about looking at both sides of an issue, or making sure you present a balanced picture, a picture of your topic. And so what controversies are out there in terms of the topic that you're looking at? Are there some disagreements in the field? And so being able to identify those might be a piece of that literature review. So what can a literature review be? Well, it could be a part of a larger research study. If you are writing a dissertation or a thesis, your literature review might be one of the chapters in that. So it's a piece of it. If you're writing, a lot of times, maybe a major grant proposal, you might have a literature review as a part of that. And so as a part of that, the literature review helps to provide context. Why are you studying what you're studying? Why are you doing that research? And so the literature review can provide that background knowledge to help frame the research that you're doing, or frame the information that you're providing. So it provides context, or like I said, that background information. It can help you set the scope of it. So you can focus in your literature review on the particular areas that you're looking at, and then that can help set the boundaries for what you're going to be doing. It provides justification for your search, or for your research. So if you've got your research questions and maybe some sub-questions, or your thesis question, your thesis topic, this can help to say, well, because of this, this is why my scope is the way it is, or this is the context that I've provided, or these are the methodologies that I've used because these have been successful in other areas. Or even looking at, for example, if you're using quantitative research or qualitative research, you might have justifications for what methods are in there by looking at what the experts recommend that is done. So in that way, it can provide justification for what you are doing by saying, this is what the research shows, this is what literature is, this is what the experts say. It helps you, especially when a larger context in a thesis or dissertation, to establish that theoretical framework. You know, what is the theoretical framework that you are using for your study, and what does the literature say about that theoretical framework? And so you're providing some background information on it. And it can help you develop your argument in terms of if you look at the research that's been done and you present, it kind of goes with the so what. So as you're presenting different parts of that research and you pull it all together, because you've identified a gap that's out there, you can say, we need to study this because it's not been studied. This is what the researcher's saying. Or if I pull all this research together, this is why I believe this argument to be true, or this hypothesis to be a good hypothesis, because that's kind of what the research is leading me towards. It might be a standalone class assignment. For many assignments, most of the papers that we write in undergraduate and graduate school, we're writing literature reviews. Because what we're doing is, most of the time, we're not doing individual research. We are going out and we are taking a topic and we're finding information on that topic, and then we're presenting it. We're writing a paper where we discuss that topic. And so a lot of times when we're doing, like I said, papers, we're doing that standalone class assignment or a literature review. It also can be an introduction to a paper or a journal article. A lot of times when you're providing an introduction to your paper, or when you're reading scholarly journal articles, scholarly journal articles follow a particular format. And it really doesn't matter which field you're in. If it is a scholarly primary research article where somebody is presenting their research, there's a format that it follows. And it starts off with that introduction or setting the context. providing that background knowledge, which is the literature review. Then it will go into methodologies and the results, and then discussion and a conclusion. But that first part is a literature review where they set the context. They say, this is what we're studying and why, and this is, and establishing that framework on which the article is built. There also may be review articles that are published as a literature review on their own, where somebody goes out, does a survey of the information that's out there, looks to see what's been published, and then publishes that article to just provide a review of a literature on a topic that is relevant to a particular field. So those are what a literature review can be. Now, what is it not? All of these kind of are the same. It's not an annotated bibliography or a descriptive list of sources or a report of summarized sources. So in this, you're trying to present a cohesive whole, a cohesive story. And it's not just telling one source and then going to the next source and then going to the next source and summarizing them. What you're doing is you're trying to take those sources. So you take related sources that are connected and you put them all together and you pull the information out of them that you get, and where there are similarities, then you put that into thoughts that are as a whole, not just individually talking about one source after another. So you're trying to make a cohesive story that flows. So this diagram is from the literature review book by Mackey and McAvoy, and this is how they outline the literature review process. There are other diagrams and other methods that could use, but this is the one that I'm going to go ahead and base the rest of what we're presenting on to look at the steps. So we're looking at 6 steps to success, to a successful literature review. All right, so the first step is select the topic. Research shows in the library world that this is when you're selecting a topic, it's very emotional. The actual research process is emotional, with your emotions going up and down like a roller coaster. So selecting a topic is not easy. You're kind of towards the bottom when you're doing that emotionally, and then you kind of go up and down as you go through the whole process. But one of the first things is, what guidelines do you have? Now, for an assignment, you might have guidelines that your instructor has provided. For a dissertation or thesis, you might have guidelines from your school or college or from your committee. Or maybe it's there are guidelines that you have to follow when putting something together from maybe the graduate school. So there's different guidelines, and so you make sure that you follow those. But I think one of the most important things to remember is that when you're selecting a topic, find something that's interesting to you, something that you're curious about, something that you want to know more about, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with this, especially if it's a thesis or dissertation. You're going to be spending months, years looking at this topic, and so you really want it to be something that you're curious about and that you're interested in and that you're passionate about, so that you will continue to look for that information. How do you do that? Something might come up in class discussions. I know from my own experience, sitting in maybe a class discussion or maybe a conference presentation helps to provide ideas to me that I might then want to follow up and do research on. My own dissertation topic came out of just having one of the concepts of emotional intelligence mentioned in a class. When I heard it, I thought, I think that could be applied to reference and information services librarians. And so it just kind of clicked. I didn't know much about emotional intelligence at the time, but it allowed me to think about that and explore it a little bit. You might have topics in personal experience or professional experience. If you're working in the field, there may be things, like I said, that come up at conferences, that networking with other professionals and colleagues that you might come up with an idea. So those are, look at those experiences that you have. You might want to just take a broad topic and scan journal articles that are out there. If there's something in your area that you're interested in, you might want to go just look at, do a quick broad search. Google Scholar is often a good place to do this, and just look out there to see what has been written on that topic. I know one of the things that several of us here are interested in is like gaming and instruction. How do you provide games or gamification to instruction to help students learn? And so, to find out what's been written on that, I could go out and do a broad search, and then I might find some different concepts that will help me narrow that down. Reading professional literature and postings, like on professional blogs, listservs, looking at professional association websites to see what they're talking about, looking at association publications. One of the things that you can often do is sign up for these publications, at least to get a table of contents. And so when you have that table of contents, for example, there's a couple journals that are in the library, especially academic library area. I get those table of contents once a month, and I look through that to see what other librarians are writing about or what are they doing, and that gives me ideas that then I can follow up later on my own. Focusing your topic. This goes back to, we're not trying to save the world with our research. We want to just maybe save one small piece of it. And so being able to make sure that your topic is manageable. Often I'll use, when I'm talking especially to undergraduates, I'll use my son and one of his papers for an example. When he was in high school, he needed to write about an event that changed the world, a historical event. And he picked World War II. This was a 4 to 5 page paper. I told him, I said, there's encyclopedias that have been written on that topic. Maybe you need to narrow it down a little bit. So then he narrowed it down to the Holocaust. Same thing. I said, son, there's a lot of stuff written on that. Once again, there's entire encyclopedias. So lots of research there. Can you narrow it down more? And so he didn't really narrow it down in that paper, except he had one thing on his last page where he talked about how Denmark did not lose a single Jewish individual to the Holocaust because they took when they were occupied by the Germans, they were able to take all of their Jewish people and Jewish citizens, get them to the coast, and then they smuggled them out in fishing boats over to Sweden in the middle of the night. And so that one little piece that he spent a couple of paragraphs on at the end could have been his entire paper, because it was a focused enough topic that he could have then found enough information to write the 3 to 4 pages. So know what your assignment is and be able to focus your topic so that it's manageable. And then after you have your topic, you need to be able to write your topic in the form of a question. What is it that you want to know? When you're looking at topics that you're wanting to study, and it might start off with several questions. You might start off with thinking about all the different questions that you want to know, and then focus that down to your one major research question, because that focus is then going to provide the scope for your research, and it's going to help you narrow it down as you're looking through the information that is out there, because there's a lot of information to go through. So one way to practice, and when I'm done presenting this, there is a library guide that we have, a research guide on our website that has information about, we'll have this, the recording for this will be there, plus the PowerPoint. And so these different practice things, but some of the things that you can do or steps that you can take when you're selecting a topic is to first write down what is your research interest or issue. What broadly are you interested in? And then You might need to do some searching just to see what's out there, but what are the key parts or the things that make up that research interest? And so that's where a lot of times we'll teach students about concept mapping. And you can do this on paper. There are lots of concept mapping software out there where you might go out there and try to identify what are the parts that make it up, or what are the key ideas. So brainstorm with your topic. You might need to get a what we call a working knowledge or an overview of that topic, so you know a little bit about it. For example, I didn't know until I started looking at emotional intelligence. I thought it was just one concept, but then I started looking at it, and there's about 3 different models that go with it. And then beyond those main models, there's more models underneath. So there's a lot of versions of emotional intelligence out there. So I needed to go out and figure out what the key ideas were that made it up and which models were out there, so be able to start looking at how to narrow down and how to focus. Do you have previous knowledge about your research interest? If you do not, you might want to find a very broad article so that you can learn a little bit about it, so that you start knowing where you need to narrow it down. And then that's where I talk about listing out your questions. What questions are you curious about? What questions do you want answered? And so you can go through and look at that research interest and see if you can come up with those questions. From those questions, then pick one. Pick a specific one that you can focus on, be able to do that. And then be able to write your research interest in about 3 sentences or less. What are you studying? Give a short definition of what is it that you're looking at. How are you going to do it? What methodologies are going to use? This might even be as broad as, are you going to use qualitative methods, quantitative methods, or mixed methods? Are you going to use surveys? Are you going to do some kind of a test? Are you going to do interviews? How are you going to study it? What academic field are you going to use? And this sounds easier than it might be. For example, you might have a topic that maybe hasn't really been studied in your field, but it's been looked at in other fields, which was the case for my topic. And so I had to go to other fields and see what research had been done on it, and then use that research to apply to my topic in the library field. And then the last question is, so what? Why is this important? And so that's one of the questions. You look at, what is the purpose for doing the research? Why should somebody care about this? Why is it important? So being able to verbalize or write down why you think that this research is going to be significant is a piece of what we're looking at. So this slide is, your librarian is your friend and can help. Just remember that as you're going through this process, that we have librarians that are available and they can help you through the process. So when in doubt, ask your librarian. We do a lot more than just check out books or laptops at the front desk. In fact, it's been a while since I've checked out a book. And so what we can do is we can help you identify key terms. We can help you searching through the literature. We can help you with your citations. The things that we can't really help you with are reading the articles and writing your literature review. But the rest of the stuff, we can help you getting to that point and finding the sources that you need, helping you organize the sources, and then writing the citations and citing those sources. So the next step in the literature review process is to search the literature. And I put beyond Google. I know, as do most librarians and faculty members, that a lot of students, when they're starting a research project, head straight to Google. And so these are some tips and tricks, things that you might want to think about before going straight to Google. The first one is, think about the types of resources that are available that might have information on your topic. If it's a very current topic, it may not be published in books. It may be only in journal articles, or it may be in the news. A lot of research that is kind of cutting edge may be in dissertations and theses, because students are constantly looking for ways to do research or new topics to do research on. And so you might look at dissertations and theses. I know for my own research that I found that to be very helpful, not only in identifying resources, but being able to look at a dissertation or a thesis to see how it is written and to see how I should give it to provide me a model that then I could base my own upon. We do have dissertations and theses full text through the ESU library. It's under ProQuest, so it's ProQuest Dissertations and Theses. And the dissertations and theses in that are full text, and so you can get to them without getting them from another library. And so that is very nice. It's a very nice resource to be able to access. Maybe, books. Some of your resources might be in books or chapters of books. One thing about books is they're going to be a lot broader, and so you might just want sections of the book, or like I said, a chapter. Look it in the index to see if your topic is covered and how it is covered. And then government publications. If the government does a lot of studies, publishes a lot of statistical information, and so there may be government publications that are appropriate for your topic, depending on what your topic is. One of the next steps is to kind of think about the subject area that you're going to be searching in and identify the appropriate databases. Now, your topic might be more cross-disciplinary, and so you might search other databases in other fields. For example, I searched not only in the library literature for my topic, but I also searched in the business field and the nursing field. And so I needed to identify the various databases in those fields to be able to use them. One of the things that you could do is from the library's homepage, when you click on databases, we have about 130 databases, and that can be a little overwhelming. But one of the things that you can do is up at the top is you can limit it by subject. And so when you limit it by subject, that allows you to look at databases that are in that subject area. And so it allows you to narrow it down, and it makes it so that it's not so overwhelming. You can also search several databases at one time. And so that's a way to be able to go through and look at the resources in a variety of databases without having to do the search over and over again in each individual database. One of the things you want to do is you want to be able to figure out the key concepts in your topic or look at terminology. Every field is going to have its own special words or terminology that they use. And sometimes when you start off, it's very difficult to know that. But as you read literature and as you look at titles and look at abstracts, you're going to come up with more key terms and words. You might also look at subject terms and records because those are going to help you think about other ways to say what you're trying to say and provide you with other words that you might try searching to be able to do that. And so you can learn what terminology is used for the concepts that you're searching. You'll want to search the literature. And I've got Boolean operators here and then primary and secondary resources. So using what we call Boolean operators or the concepts of and or, you'll want to be able to do a search to be able to look for things. When you put or between terms, you're broadening your search. So you're looking for words that mean pretty much the same thing or they're synonymous. When you throw and in, every time you and in another term, then you are narrowing your search. And there's lots of information and videos out there about how do you use and or in searching for information. Primary and secondary resources. The literature reviews that I talked about, the papers that we write for classes, those are secondary resources. They're still important because what they do when you've got a literature review on a topic, they've gone out and they've taken that topic, whoever's written it, and has looked for the literature that's out there on that topic. And so that provides you, by looking at who they are citing, that can provide leads to you to other resources. Primary resources are where the researcher is first presenting their research, and so they're talking about their own research, and those are good to look at. One, to get an example of how it's written, but also to see what sources they use too, and to look to see what methodologies they used and be able to maybe replicate some of the information or some of the methodologies. As you're going through and scanning this literature and looking at it, you need to identify what you're learning about the topic. Who are the important authors out there? Are you seeing which are the seminal or classic studies? Where do they all go back towards? As you're doing this, your research topic might be changing, because as you find more information, or you may narrow your topic, you may find a different focus. So you may be refining your topic as you look for this information. Part of this would be scanning the literature, seeing what's available on a particular topic. As I said, a lot of times when I'm starting a research project, I might jump into Google Scholar just to see what's out there. And so for me, that is, it's a resource that covers a lot of different subjects. It can pull up a lot of literature, and it's a way to just kind of get an idea or a sense. It's a place to start. It's not a place to finish, but it's a place to start. One of the things is to be organized and manage your information or resources. And I can tell you all of the ways that I have listed here: annotated bibs, Zotero, and note cards. I've used all three of them. I created an annotated bib so that when I looked at a source, I had a short summary of what it was about in my own words. I used Zotero so that I could keep track of my sources online, so that I wasn't continually maybe using some of the same sources over and over again. But that way, Zotero is online, so it was always accessible. No matter where I'm doing research, I can get into Zotero and I can find to see what I've cited or what I've already used and looked at. And I've also used note cards, where I've gone through and I keep a note card for every source that I've used, plus I use larger note cards for my notes. And so I have used all three of those systems. I know another colleague of mine that used notebooks. She divided notebooks into themes and then put the articles for each theme into a particular notebook. For my full text articles, I've used file folders and kept them organized that way. As you're going through, you're going to want to skim the resources or skim the literature that you're finding to figure out what is going to be particular to your topic. And in the beginning, you're probably going to be less selective than you will be towards the end. As you work through the process, you're going to be selecting those things that are absolutely paramount to what you're doing, because you cannot include everything that you're reading in your literature review. So as you start moving through it, you're going to then have some criteria, and like I said, be a little more selective about what you're picking, so that you're not trying to read everything. One way to do this also is to map your ideas. As you come across new ideas, you might create either a chart that keeps track of those ideas or those themes, so you kind of have an idea of what you're encountering. And like I said, refine your topic as needed and be organized. So here's another practice in searching the literature. Be able to write down your topic as a sentence. How do you understand your topic? Think about the literature types, the types of literature: books, journal articles, newspapers, primary source materials that might have information on your topic. Think about your subject areas for your topic. Which subject areas might have that information? For example, customer service might be covered in libraries, but it also might be covered in patient care with nursing, or it might be covered as customer service in business. So thinking about the different subject areas, that then will help you list and identify the specific databases that you can use. Take a look at your topic and identify your key concepts. What are the main concepts in your topic? And then come up with the keywords. Think like a thesaurus. What different ways can you say that? And it might be, like I said, going through the articles to come up with things that you didn't even think of how to call something, or looking at subject terms to see what somebody else is using. begin by searching for the broader concepts in the databases, and then begin to look to see how can you narrow that down. And like I said, scan articles, abstracts for different ways to narrow it and map out those concepts. So the next step in the whole thing is a planning step, and that's developing your argument. And this is where you're really actually going through and reading through that information that you found and being able to organize the data that you're finding in categories and themes. And so one of the things that I know I did was, as I was taking notes, I would color code, or I would code the different themes. So every note card would have a different theme, so that once I started putting it all together, I could organize it. Another tip that I read somewhere else was that if you didn't want to use note cards, that you take notes on a computer and you organize the themes that way. And then when you get ready to write a particular part, you can cut those different sections apart, noting what resources you use. So you want to be organized and do it systematically, so you can get back to them. Be able to look at that and then organize it that way when you're starting to write with the different pieces of paper. You want to analyze your data and read the articles, but remember, you're not reading for a test or memorization. And this is one thing that really did stop me for a little bit, and it really slowed me down. I was reading articles several times till I realized I'm not going to be tested on this. This is not something I need to be able to say back from memory. These are things that I just need to take notes on and then be able to organize it. So do not sit and pore over these articles over and over again. In fact, read the abstract. Start with that. See if it fits with you or not. If you're not sure, I mean, then you could read a little more. Glance over the lit review, but look at the results and the conclusions. So I read the abstract, I glance at the literature review. After a while, the literature reviews all start saying the same thing usually. I look at the methodologies to see what methods they're using, and then I jump straight to the results and the conclusions. What is the discussion? What did they figure out? Because you're not going to be able to include everything, like I said, in your literature review. You're going to have to be selective. Bucci and McAvoy, they talk about two types of arguments when you're developing this argument. One is the argument of discovery, findings about that current state of knowledge on the topic. What has been done out there? What is known about your topic? What is the prevailing belief on your topic? And then there's the argument of advocacy, where you go through and you analyze and you critique the knowledge that's been out there. This helps you to develop your thesis statement or come to that research question as you're looking through the literature. What's missing? What could you work on? What questions still need to be answered? Finding resources to support your argument. And so when you're doing that, you're advocating, or you're looking for things that help support what you believe and what you're looking for. They come up with two, looking at claim. Claim would be maybe a fact or something that you claim, and then being able to provide evidence for that claim. Finding the resources and the research that will support your claim. This is where I talk about seeking balance in resources, making sure that you are providing a balanced coverage of what you're looking for. There is always some bias in research, but you want to counterbalance that by being able to look at both sides of an issue. For example, looking at the different models of emotional intelligence, obviously the people that developed one model are going to think they have the best model, and that the next one isn't, the next couple of models aren't going to be as good. Whereas the one that developed the second model is going to think the first and the third model are not that good. And so being able to provide information on all three of the models, what are the pros and cons, and then why did I select the one that I selected? Being able to provide a balanced viewpoint or a picture, a broad picture of your topic. And like I said, documenting the evidence for your argument. And so that's where you're trying to support your claims or provide evidence for what it is that you're looking at. So surveying and critiquing the literature are two steps. I've kind of put them together. And that's where you pull together all the data and the resources that you found, and you skim and read. Find a way to do that. It might be highlighting that you use to extract key elements. You might write it down and take notes, but use that to identify themes. What are popping up? What trends do you see? And be able to read through those and you're going to start figuring out, you're going to start seeing those trends or those themes, things that keep popping up that you're going to be able to then develop and include in your literature review. And synthesize that information. Like I said, you don't want to present one source after another so that it looks like you're just summarizing each source. You want to be able to pull it all together. What are you learning about your topic? What do you know? What conclusions can you draw from the information or the literature that you're reading? What does it lead you to? Hopefully, the information that you've pulled together comes together so that it points straight to your research questions. Why is it important? Why are you looking at this? I say a lot of times that doing research is like being a detective. What you're wanting to do when you're analyzing the content of the resources that you develop is kind of like detective work. What is the data telling you? What are the resources that you're finding saying? What's the story that it's telling you? What are you learning from it? And what are the relationships? How does all of this fit together so that you can put it into a cohesive whole that flows from one thing to another? One of the things I know that I've struggled a little with is being repetitious. And so making sure that I cut down the pieces. I mean, everything seems important at first, but you got to be able to cut it down so that you're able to tell that story and that everything flows from one to another and that it makes sense. You need to be methodical. Find a method that works for you and do it every time so that you're consistent. Do the same thing so that it all works together, so that when you're trying to write your review, you have your sources all in one place. You have your notes all in one place, and that you can just pull it all together. You want to be systematic when you're doing it, and this may even be when you're searching for information. A good way to do this is to go out, keep track of the databases you're using. Maybe create a chart. Write down the database that you used or the databases if you search them together. What key terms did you enter in? When you entered those key terms, what results did you find? So keep a history of the searches that you're doing. You could even print these off of your computers. A lot of times in the databases, you can go in, click on search history, and see that history. So be able to look at that. And make sure you're rigorous. You want to try to leave no stone unturned. So you want to think of all the ways that you can search it. You may not use all of that literature. You may not read all of that literature, but you want to try to uncover that and see what's out there, because one of the worst things that could happen is that maybe you're sitting in a committee meeting or you're presenting your proposal or your thing, your dissertation or your thesis, and somebody says, have you looked at this literature? And so you want to try to make sure you've tried to cover all of the literature that's out there. So you want to do a really good job of searching to see. And then assessing what you found. This is where you start being selective. Does the information or the article that you're looking at or the book, does it answer your original question? Does it fit within the scope of your research? If not, get rid of it. Don't, maybe I've got a list of things that I didn't use. I put it on there, so, I put it in my bibliography so that I know that I touched it. I put it in Zotero so that I know that I looked at it, but I also would say not used or not a valuable resource, so that I was able to then, start focusing down, because otherwise I could spend the rest of my life trying to write a literature review. And then assess what you have found. Are there gaps? When you're starting to put things together or pull things together, are there areas that you feel you should cover but you don't have enough literature on? If that's the case, go back and search specifically for those areas. See if you can find anything more. And so continuing to look at that, are there questions that you have that you need to find more resources for? So looking through and doing your searches is not doing a literature review, going through this process. You'll notice when we started, it's a circular process. This is not something that is a linear process where you start and go from step to step. You might have to go back and redo some steps and keep going them over until you have all of the information that you need. Skimming and reading. So these are just some tips on skimming and reading. One, like I said, you're not going to be tested on this information. Don't read to memorize it. Don't read it over and over and over again. Read through it, maybe skim through it once, kind of get the main points, take notes, and then maybe read through it again. Like I said, concentrate on the abstract, maybe a little bit of the introduction, glance at methodology, and then concentrate on the discussion at the end. What did they find out? And then systematically identify the resources that you've used. Use a way to be able to keep track of that. Some of the questions that you might be looking for as you're looking for the resources, as you're doing the reading, do you have resources that are able to define your topic and show where it originated from? Have you gone back to those seminal sources? What are some of the key theories or concepts or ideas that you're covering in your research? Do you have sources that talk about that? Do you have sources that cover any debates or arguments or issues or controversies with your issue or your topic? Are there questions and problems that have been addressed? Do you have sources that talk about that? And are there gaps in the literature? And what are those gaps and where are they? So being able to look at those can help you do well-rounded research. And when you're taking notes, some of the things that I learned when I first started, I had note cards after note cards just on one source. And then I recognized I wasn't going to be able to use all of that information in my literature review, because a literature review is not as long as what the notes was that I was taking. And so I started to be more consistent and more systematic about it. So these are some key elements that you might just want to use to identify in your notes. Look at the introduction. What's the problem that they're studying? What's the purpose for the research? And what are their research questions? So I would write those down or highlight those. What methodology did they use? And what was their sample? Who did they use in their research? Who did they study? And then jump to the end and look at the discussion. What were their key findings? And what were the conclusions and recommendations that they did? Now that seems like the whole article, but honestly it isn't. Just kind of going through, skimming through, and finding those pieces. Being able to get that out really is all you need to be able to then use that in writing your literature review. And finally, the last step is to actually sit down and write the literature review. One of the first steps to do this is develop a detailed outline. Take those themes that you've identified and be able to put them in an outline that makes sense. Now, I can tell you from experience, the outline that you start with may not be the outline that you finish with, because things may come up. As you're reading through and doing the research, you may change your focus. You might find other subtopics to put in. It may be rearranged. You may start with an emphasis on one thing, and then later it switches over to emphasizing another element. And so, but developing that outline kind of gives you a framework on which to hang your literature review. These next two things, write to understand, write to be understood. So write to understand is writing for you to understand your topic. What is it going to take for you to understand? What have you learned about your topic? But then write to be understood means we all, as I spoke earlier, we all have terminology or language that we use in our various areas that somebody outside the area might not understand. And so make sure that you are explicit and clear and explaining things. And you may think that you're explaining something too much, but make sure that somebody outside your field understands what you're talking about. So write to be understood. Write to make things clear, explicit, and understandable. As I've said several times, be selective with the literature that you include. Everything you read, you are not going to include in your literature review. You just need enough to be able to tell a story. Especially if you're writing a literature review at the beginning of a chapter or a journal article. Those are very short. So you're not going to be able to include everything that's in there. And tell a story. This is not an annotated bib, or it's not an isolated chain of summaries of sources. You want to be able to read those sources, take the information from those sources, and then put it together in a cohesive whole, showing the different connections, connecting each paragraph to each other, connecting the sections together, so that you're able to provide the context and paint a picture. And you're able to put it all together so that you have a story that flows together, and not these isolated individual studies that you're just summarizing and describing. So this last page has 3 of the resources that I used in putting this presentation together, along with my own knowledge. As I said, I based a lot of it on the Mackey and McAvoy book with the literature review, 6 Steps to Success. There's also a couple other resources that we have in our library, completing your qualitative dissertation and doing a literature review. There's lots of other sources that talk about the literature review, so these are just some of them. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to contact me. Here I've provided my email address. That's the best way to initiate contact. But as you have questions, you can contact me. You can also just go in and contact the library. We have somebody here that's here till midnight most of the nights, or you can contact individual librarians in different subject areas. So just want to put that out there. Remember that librarians are here to help you, and feel free to contact us as needed. All right, so that ends the presentation for tonight. If you have any questions or want to contact us, like I said, feel free to contact me, and I will work with you.